Hi, and welcome to a session on extending Copilot for sales. My name is Amreek Singh. I'm a senior solution architect with the FastTrack team for Dynamics. As you may already know, we have two different experiences for the Sales Copilot. The first one is Copilot for Sales. This experience sits in Microsoft 365 and Teams applications. And the second one is Copilot in Dynamics 365 Sales, which is an in-app experience. This session is about the first experience. Also, a couple of weeks ago, I did a session on extending Copilot in Dynamics 365 Sales. If you haven't watched that video, please go and have a look at that. We have divided this session into two parts. In part one, we'll start with introduction. Then we'll look at different extension points and the requirements, followed by the ALM process. And we will end this part with a live demo on how to create your first plugin. In the next part, we will look at how to delete a custom plugin. We cover a real-world scenario where we will be using a Power Automate flow instead of using an API, and we also cover some useful resources. Extensibility helps you to enhance and extend the software to meet your specific business needs. It helps in driving adoption. With the help of Copilot Studio, you can enrich and enhance the capabilities of Copilot for Sales. Out of the box, the Copilot brings you insights from Microsoft Graph and your CRM system. But with the help of extensibility, you can enrich these insights from any third-party APIs. You can see some third-party plugins on the screen. For example, with DocuSign, you can enrich your opportunity summary with the contract information. Similarly, you can enhance these capabilities from any third-party APIs, and we're going to show you just that in this session. Let's see how it works. When we interact with the Copilot for Sales, it invokes the related skill surveys that present insights to the end user. We have two types of skills. The first one is out-of-the-box sales skills, opportunity summary, email summary, key sales info. These are all examples of out-of-the-box sales skills. And then we have large language model-based question-answer or chat skills. For example, you can ask a question, what's assigned to me? With the extensibility, the skill surveys can interact with these third-party plugins to enrich the existing insights or present a new question-answer based insight. As you can see on the screen, you can build these ISV plugins using Microsoft Copilot Studio. These ISV plugins or custom plugins interact with the ISV connector or your custom connector in the Dataverse, which in turn communicate with your third-party APIs. These are the 5 extension points available at the moment, and I have a screenshot for most of them except enrich key sales info. So first extension point is email summary, then key sales info, then enrich CRM record details, and the fourth one is enrich CRM record summary. This is one of the most important one because I'll be using this extension point in all my demos for this session. And the last one is add a new Q&A capability to the sales chat. It's not hard to extend the Copilot for Sales, but it's not as easy as using any built-in connector in the Copilot Studio. To extend the Copilot, you must follow some strict guidelines. This is what the Copilot is expecting. Your API must accept all the required input parameters and also return the outputs as expected by the Copilot. Then you need to expose your API through a Power Platform custom connector that supports or authentication, and finally an action that can add the required descriptions to the connector. We're going to talk about this thing in detail in the next slide. This is a public documentation on how to enrich CRM record summary. This is what your Copilot is expecting from your custom connector. The very first thing it's expecting is a specific description for this action. As you know, a custom connector can have multiple actions. So based on this specific description, the Copilot will figure out when to invoke this action. Let's have a quick look at the input parameters. We have 8 different input parameters here, but the only first 2 are the required ones, the record type and the record ID. Again, the input parameter names can be totally different in your custom connector or in your API. But this description will tell the Copilot where to pass those values. Let's have a look at the output parameters now. We have 2 output parameters. The first one is an array of objects, and the second one is a Boolean. Again here, the most important part here is the description of those individual attributes of the object. If you scroll down, we have these additional properties, which is an object. So there is an object within an object. So this is a sample response. You can use this to create your APIs. It's exactly showing the exactly same schema or output parameters here. So you have an array of objects, and then you have additional property, which is an object within that object. One of the most important part here is you don't have to have these specific descriptions in your API or in your API manager or even in your custom connector. You can set this specific description for these fields when you're creating your plugin in the Copilot Studio. The ALM process is exactly the same as any other dynamic CE or Power Platform ALM process. So here are the steps. Create a solution. Choose that solution when you create an action in the Copilot Studio. After that, just export and import the solution into the higher environments. There's one exception to this. If you are a Salesforce customer, you have only one Power Platform environment. You can't deploy this solution into other environments, but you still have options. You can use the input parameters passed by the Copilot for Sales to differentiate between your environments. So there are 2 parameters that Copilot for Sales is sending to the custom connector. The first one is a CRM type, and the value can be Salesforce or Dynamics. And the second one is CRM org URL. So it will also pass the URL of the environment. So using that, you can actually decide if you want to enrich the insights or not. These are the 5 steps I followed to create my first plugin. The very first thing I did was use the sample response from the public documentation to create my first API in Visual Studio. Then I used the Visual Studio to publish my API behind the API Manager. Then in the API Manager, I create my definitions and the descriptions what the Copilot is expecting. Then I create a custom connector using a sample connector in the public documentation. And then I create a plugin or add action in the Copilot Studio. Then I test my plugin in the Outlook. I'm in the Visual Studio here. Before I go any further, this session is not about how to create an API or how to use an API manager. I have created this API based on a sample response in the public documentation. It's just for the demo purposes. I have a couple of classes here. The first one is a contract class. It has some attributes. Then I have a related activities class that has a list of contracts, and also a Boolean has more results. This is exactly what the Copilot is expecting from our API. Let's have a quick look at the controller class. It's very basic. I have only one HTTP GET action here. I have a couple of contract objects. They are both hard-coded, as I'm not using any data source. And the only other thing I'm returning is has more resources equal to false. One more thing here, I'm returning a OK response or 200 response. You should include any other response that you're expecting from your API, such as 404, not found, or error messages like 400 or 500. This is my API manager. The URLs were created automatically for me when I deployed the solution in the Visual Studio. The backend URL is my API URL, and the front end URL is what my connector will be calling. You can also say some of the parameters there, input, output parameters, also the responses and definitions. There are a couple of ways you can edit this information. One of them is Open API Editor. Here you can change the security definition, you can change the parameters, name, data types, job descriptions. I think one of the most important part here is the definitions itself. I have two definitions here, record and record list. And this is super important because that's what the Copilot is expecting as the data types and also the descriptions. You can also change some of this information, especially the parameters from the front end here. These are the two required parameters, and these are the other query parameters. You can change the descriptions, types, and values. So I have only 200 OK response here. You can add more. You can also look at the definitions too if you want to, but you can change that in the JSON format too. One of the other most important part here is the API manager lets you create a Power Platform custom connector straight from here. Originally, I did that when I created the plugin in the Copilot Studio and tested it out in the Outlook. I didn't get the expected results. Thankfully, the Microsoft released a sample connector that you can use as a base connector. The name of the sample connector is Contoso Hub. Let's have a look. If you want to use the connector as it is, you can change the host name and also change the endpoint path to in the Swagger editor. I'll show you that. The most important part here is the definition. Here we have 5 actions. The first one is get related activities or enrich CRM record summary. And then other 4 are the other extension points available in the Copilot. Now, if you scroll down, we have multiple references here. These are very much the definitions that Copilot is expecting from the different endpoints. So first one, activity list response. These are 2 important ones, minimum for the record summary. If you click on the individual parameter, you're going to see the proper description that we had in our API. We have the same description here. So you can use this very much as a base connector. What I did was I created a copy of this connector and made my changes. So my connector name is sales extension. If you click on definition, I have only one action. So I'm just working with the related activities or the record summary part of it. So if you look at the references, I only need the record list, and the API header. I don't need any of the other ones because they belong to other extension points. You can delete them if you want to. I just left it there. The other thing I did was I renamed the out-of-the-box references like activity lists with my record and record type because that's what I'm using in my API, so I want you to match them. So here, I changed the host name to my API manager URL. If you click on the editor here, or Swagger editor, that's the host name. Here you can change the path to a specific endpoint. And you can also look for the definition that you need to change. So it's much more easier to work in a Swagger editor. That's it. Once you make the changes, you save the connector, and you're good to go. Here we are in the Copilot Studio. Click on Copilot for Sales. Add action. Select your custom connector. Select a solution here. As all of our extensions are solution aware, click Next. On this screen, you will see all the actions, available actions. For this connector, we have only one, so select that. So this is a description that will tell the Copilot when to invoke this action. You can make the changes here, but we have a perfect description in our custom connector, so we don't have to change anything. Click Next. Same here, we won't be changing any description. Click Next. So if you have more than one action, you can select another action here, but we don't, so click on Next. So this is one of the most important steps. Here you can test your plugin without publishing it. So select a connection or create a new connection, then click on Test Action. This will load your plugin in Copilot, and now you can test it in Outlook without publishing it. Select an email. As this section is enhancing CRM record summary, so if you look at the opportunity info or opportunity summary, you will see the insights coming from our plugin. So as you can see, the status from a sales extension, the information is there. If you click on the citation, you can see a bit more information like contract name, signed by, and the date. As we don't have any other logic in our API, so you would see exactly same information when you go to an account. But if you want to differentiate, you just want to enhance the opportunity summary, just say, then you can use the parameter entity type is equal to opportunity in your API. So as you can see, you have the same information in the account info or account summary. So if you're happy with the outcome, you can go ahead and publish this plugin. But if there's any issues or you want to update it, you can go back to your custom connector, make those changes, come back and test it again. Here we're going to publish this. This tab will publish this connector in M365 Admin Center under Integrated Apps, where we enable the Copilot for Sales on the first place. There your admin can make this connector available to the rest of the users. Thanks for listening. Please join us again in the part 2 of the session.